Tour guides and places where we
glad that Josh is here with the bus and the door's working. Hooray, hooray. And you know, on a trip like this, there's always one thing that goes wrong. So I'm just delighted that we got that out of the way. The rest of the trip, there's no problems.
Does everybody have water? Yes. Now one of those is actually pure vodka. We're going to find out who got that at the end of the tour. You see that brick building right in front of us? That's where my dad went to school. Yep, that was the old Halifax Academy. And after grade 9, he carried his books for a whole year before my grandmother found out he wasn't going. Years ago, it was a particularly windy day. And apparently, she was full Monty'd a number of times. I want you to look at the number 4 on the clock. It's 4 slashes instead of the Roman numeral 1V. And they did that because they said it was more aesthetically pleasing. So our first stop, as George said, is going to be on Citadel Hill. And you can see it from here. They're both known as glacial drumlins. They were left behind by the glaciers thousands of years ago. This hill being made of earth and stone. Now when we get in there, we're going to walk through a small tunnel to get inside, which is the main gate, and you're going to see that there are stones making a paving sort of road inside that. Those are cobblestones, and they arrived here in the ballast of ships coming in. So when they came here, they dumped the stones and then load the ships full of cargo and then take them back. So what they ended up doing was using these stones to pave the streets here in Halifax. This is the second most visited historic site in Canada. The most visited historic site is the Parliament buildings in Ottawa. Okay. So they built this. It took them about 23 years. And it's an absolutely gorgeous fortress.
We're standing in right now is what's known as the signal post. And that's simply because this is the area they would use for signaling. Now when I say signaling,
the female will say it's time, she'll pick a shell. And the females are a little wider in the tail than the males are, okay? But they do have a bigger brain. There you go. You're going to see rocks on top of rocks for no apparent reason. They were left behind by the glaciers thousands of years ago. So Peggy's Cove has a year-round population of between 33 and 60 people. That's all that live there. It's now a UNESCO site. You cannot build anymore in Peggy's Cove. If you want to live there, you have to buy an existing home from somebody or it's passed down to you through the family. The interesting thing about Peggy's Cove also is there are no basements in Peggy's Cove, there's no septic systems in Peggy's Cove, and there are no wells in Peggy's Cove. So if you want... So the only word of caution that I'm going to give you when we go out here is don't walk on the black rocks. And I'm deadly serious here because we lose a tourist or two every year. And then as soon as you pick them up, well, hello there. Now take a look here. Josh is going to slow down. Look right behind you on the right-hand side. This is the Fisherman's Memorial.
Oh, yeah.
And that was carved by a man by the name of William de Garth. He was 70 years old when he started. And he worked on that for 8 years until his death. He and his wife are buried in that monument. He's even painted the trees here. Oh, here he comes. Here he comes. There's Ivan. Just a gift. So it's a great shot to get. And the 5 churches are a Lutheran church, a United church, an Anglican church, a Roman Catholic church, and a Presbyterian church. So Mahone Bay was founded in 1754. And if I was going to live anywhere in Nova Scotia, other than where I am now, this is where I'd want to live.
Hard as I can. Two, three, knock down.
What I would like to do is basically talk a little bit about the differences between inshore and offshore fishing, because they are very distinct fisheries.
So you don't send one to current. So now we've learned something today about now that you're in Canada. You don't say, I'm going to Newfoundland. How do you say it?
Newfoundland.
How do you say it?
Newfoundland.
Newfoundland.
Newfoundland and Labrador. Yeah.
Newfoundland, not Newfoundland.
Canada's best kept secret. It's absolutely beautiful there. Yeah, it really is. And they have a wonderful, wonderful sense of humor. And if I can tell you some of the jokes I've heard there, so I probably couldn't get away with some of them, but their sense of
Songs on our side of the line. The waves crash in and the tide pulls out. It's an angry sea, there's no doubt.
So here's where you go into the boardwalk that you see on the right goes all the way down to the Maritime Museum.
Till there's nothing left that he can hold except the rolling ocean, and I am ready for the storm. You're ready, yes sir, ready. I am ready for the storm. I'm ready for the storm. Now give me mercy for my dreams, for every confrontation seems to tell me what it really means to be the lonely sailor. And when you take me by your side, you love me.
So this was a store up until 1976. So we still have people that come in that have been in the store before and whatever. So when you guys walked into the atrium, you would have seen, like, over here is the new museum. Peekaboo.
I'm ready for the storm. Now distance is moving fast, and time will take its time, and you will find that in the end it brings you me, the lonely sailor. And when the sky begins to clear and the sun melts away my fear, I'll cry a silent pretty tear for those that need to love me, and yes sir, ready. I am ready for the storm. I'm ready for the storm. the tide goes out. It's an angry sea, but there's no doubt that the lighthouse will keep shining out to warm the lone sailor. And the lightning strikes and the wind gets cold to the sailor's bones, to the sailor's soul, till there's nothing left that he can hold except the rolling ocean.
I think we'll be okay on the weather. That explosion took place right down by where the smokestacks are, and then the ship, while it was burning, drifted across to the Halifax side. But you can see how narrow it is. Really, between these two bridges is the Narrows, the Atlantic spanning out to the right and the harbor to the left. What we learned at Grand Pre is how the Acadians were able to harness this land, drain it off, put dikes on it like they do in the Low Country in Europe, and develop really good farmland. The English kind of looked down on them because they thought they were lazy because they didn't spend all their time cutting down the trees, but they had a much better way of gaining farmland than the English, who did it by cutting down the timber and clearing the land and burning it off. I think we'll be okay on the weather.
Okay, I'm going to get started. My name's Lowell, or Lowell. In the next few minutes, I'm going to give you a little bit of history about lobsters. Some of you are about my age, so you're not going to remember it all, so I'm not going to tell you too much. So it's a whale he weighs 13.5 pounds and he's about 65 years old.
They were all floating when we came in. I think we'll be okay on the weather. Whatever is going. It tells about, it says on the back, every individual is equal before the law and has the right to equal protection and equal benefit of the law. God of the First Nation people. And not succeeded in getting nearly enough settlers for Pictou. One of the original 6 families had already left. They shipped in 9 more families in 1769, but couldn't muster more interest in that. And it seemed like a losing proposition all around. Shopping about for people less fortunate and more willing to take chances, they commissioned the Hector to sail with a shipload of Scots from Loch Broom. The passengers were poor people who could barely pay the price of passage, and the Philadelphia Company willingly took the cash. These were Scots fleeing poverty, unfair rent increases by the landlords, famine, and various kinds of trouble with the law. They were a desperate lot, eager for a chance to make a go of it in some place where the dream of owning their own land would become a reality. The Hector, the ship, was not terribly fit for sea duty. She had rock that the passengers might poke through with their fingers or pick apart with their fingernails. But the wily American, I guess the owner of the Philadelphia company, had put good paint job on, making it look like a warship that could board off pirates. Welcome to Pictou Line.
1920s, and it's got quite a history. A lot of the wood is the original wood here, and a lot of the original chandeliers, even though we have LED bulbs now. But a lot of it, this used to be, where you're sitting, used to be a veranda area where after a nice dinner you'd come out with your cigar and maybe a nice scotch and enjoy the evening here. Yeah, so it's quite a history. We've had a lot of famous visitors over the years. Babe Ruth stayed here back in the day, and when it was more of a hunting and fishing lodge. Clark Gable. This property used to be one of the CN, which is the Canadian National Railway. Here, King George III stayed here back in the day. So a really cool history. More recently, we had the pleasure of serving the British chef Jamie Oliver here. We had a private event for him and shut the whole place down just for him. And we served Anthony Bourdain as well. So. And in the Northumberland Strait here, we have the best lobster in the world. Comes out of this strait, we like to say. Lots of scallops, lots of herring, so fishing is a big industry for us here locally.
We'll get out back to the highway in about 15 minutes. And then it'll be about an hour and a half. We'll get right to there's a small causeway. So Cape Breton is an island, but it's not separated by much from the mainland, but there's a short causeway. It's not like something down in Florida. It's just a short causeway. But right before we get there, we'll do a rest stop. Gulf of St. Lawrence in the Atlantic Ocean, and the Bay of Fundy is far behind us. I think we'll be okay on the weather.
I definitely won't make an answer up. I'll tell you if I don't know. So, but anyway, as you know, we're going to travel the world famous Cabot Trail today. Our island itself is 191 miles long in the longest area, 90 miles wide in the widest area, and we have these lakes right in the middle, and they're called the Bredor Lake. Just up ahead here, over on your left-hand side, you'll see the kinds of traps they use for crab fishing just right here. See the big round ones, and you can see that they're stackable. So it's much easier to put those on those smaller boats where they're stacked and you don't have them hanging over the sides and so on when you're heading out to deeper waters. What the lone shieling is, it's actually a Scottish crofter's hut, more commonly found in the Highlands of Scotland. You'll notice the water area, you can see them in the water there as well. You know the water kind of looks black or brownish or anyway, you may have noticed that in some other areas as we've been traveling around. And the area that the water is seeping down through has titanic acid in it. And of course that causes the water to turn brown, just like it causes your tea to turn black. Buildings that we're passing by now is the Gaelic College, and they operate mainly during the spring and during July and August. During July, the students that are here are usually 18 years of age and younger. Anyway, that was Alexander Graham Bell's boathouse. Alexander Graham Bell's home is right at the point here, but Alexander and Mabel Bell discovered the area by accident. They were actually on their way to Newfoundland on vacation when they had to stop over here in Bedeck. And because of the Gaelic language and the area and that, Alexander Graham Bell was born in Scotland. Thought that,
See the fortress right out of Hector. You can see how it's right on the edge of Nova Scotia. Next stop, France. It's hard for us to recall that in the 18th century all of North America was up for grabs between Spanish, English, and French. Of course, the Spanish in South America and the Western North America, but from the center of the country, of our country on, it was all between, it was up for grabs. And it was this war that we called the French and Indian War, that's called the 7 Years' War in Europe.
And he would live right up in this location as well because it's military, so he's in charge of all to do with the military also, okay? So his...
cannon. This one here is an 18 pounder. It would have took upwards of 6 pounds of black powder.
So my name is Marie, and this is my friend Marie. Hello. And this is Madame Blanchantine. It's for the soldiers, fishermen, sailors, the lower class. And you have this lovely napkin, not because you have on your finest clothes. They're the strangest clothes I've ever seen. So we have 50-50 bread, which is white and whole wheat, and they make that for us at the King's Bakery.
You better be nice to me. I'll just walk.
So this is a French song.
So they're trading mostly for food. They trade the codfish that we have here for things like
Everybody can enjoy this music.
And Alexander Graham Bell came in the room and he replicated the sound, but didn't know that it was a yawn, so he didn't do any of the stretching, and apparently it looked kind of creepy almost, because he was just a disembodied sound. I don't want anyone to get hurt, and he was picturing these massive kites with an engine in the middle, that if the engine ever cut out, a kite would come back down to land a lot more gently than, say, an airplane, which we know doesn't do that. So this is a tetrahedron. That's kind of the building block of choice that he ended up with. And this is an early kite here. We can tell that because the fabric is white. And he didn't like that a whole lot because it wasn't very visible in photographs, especially once it's up in the air, you can hardly see it. And he wanted records of everything. So he was looking for something else to use. And going through the house one day, he found some really nice red Italian silk that Mabel had ordered for a couple of dresses she was planning to make. He got his hands on it first. So we have a couple nice red kites in our museum today.